Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new, and we are back. We are officially back for this NFL season. I can't wait. We have the first game of the season tomorrow, Thursday night. It's a showdown between the Eagles and the Cowboys. Super pumped, super excited to be back. I'm sorry for the extended hiatus, guys, but I am back. Going to be breaking down every single game for the NFL season, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at HeartDFS. And good news, I do have NFL daily fantasy projections coming out. I'll say they'll probably be out for week 2. I was trying to get them out for week 1 here, but fortunately it will not be ready. But for week 2, they will be out, and I'll be having those. You can find that on my YouTube link soon, as well as on my Twitter. So make sure to follow me there. But stay tuned for NFL DFS projection models. Will be coming your way, and they will be the cheapest in the industry, just because I think everyone. All these sites, they just scam you. They're just charging you tens, if not hundreds of dollars per month for their tools, especially the projections, and it's just not feasible for most people to pay that, and there's no reason they should have to pay that. So stay tuned on that. That will be out super soon. But in terms of some housekeeping here for this game, Eagles versus the Cowboys. I believe it's in Brazil. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's in Brazil. But we have the Eagles right now as 7.5 point favorites, and it's a 47.5 point game total. So obviously, a little bit risk of a blowout here in this game here with a 7.5 point total. But let's hop on over to these teams here in terms of what's changed since last season. So on the Dallas side, if we take a quick look at the depth chart, obviously Dak Prescott coming back from injury. They do have a whole brand new entire room of running backs. Javonte Williams from Denver, Miles Sanders, as well as Jaden Blue. For the wide receiver room, they do have George Pickens. They traded for him, obviously, from the Steelers. And they do have, Jalen Tolbert, who's obviously been there, as well as Kevontae Turpin, along with CeeDee Lamb. For the tight end room, nothing's really changed. Jake Ferguson, Luke Shoemaker are still there. And then in terms of the Eagles side, obviously not much has changed here, just a little bit. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, QB1, Saquon, RB1. In terms of the backup running backs, Will Shipley is RB2, and RB3 as of right now. What to wait and see is A.J. Dillon. Maybe that flip-flops between Will Shipley and A.J. Dillon. Who knows? But right now, I think it's clear to say that Will Shipley will be that RB2 role behind Saquon. No more Kenneth Gainwell. And then in terms of wide receivers, we have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They have Jahan Dotson from last season, and they did trade for John Mechie. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this third wide receiver slot here. I'm assuming there will be some plays where they do run 4 wide receivers out there, but they also do like to run double tight end sets with Dallas Goedert and Grant Calcaterra. So I wouldn't be surprised if John Mechie kind of eats into Jahan Dotson's snap count. So that is the kind of housekeeping here. Now, in terms of the showdown slate here, obviously $1 million to first, ton of money to be won. What do you want to do, especially if you only have a few lineups? You want to play different. You want to get unique. For me, that means I'm going to be trying to get you unique with some different plays, captain plays, kind of shy away from the very high-owned captains, the most likely captains, just because if I do end up winning, do end up having that lineup, I want to win with as few people as possible. I don't want to split it with hundreds of other people, maybe even thousands, depending on what the winning lineup is, and take home, a couple hundred, maybe only a couple thousand at most. So obviously a couple thousand, great, fantastic. I would love that. But when there's $1 million to first and you finally get that winning lineup, it's going to suck when you're not winning tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, $1 million because you played a fish lineup with hundreds, if not thousands of other people. So for me, that means in terms of these captain plays here, I'm most likely looking to guys like Devontae Smith. Obviously, he'll get some captain ownership, but obviously people are going to revert to Saquon, Jalen Hurts, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown. The 4 main guys, obviously the 4 highest projected guys on the slate. Makes sense for people to go to them, but for me, as I said, I like to get a little bit different here. Going to be looking to guys like Devontae Smith, George Pickens, and even the tight ends like a Goddard, or even Jake Ferguson here. They do have the potential to get there, as well as even the kickers. We've seen it before. Kickers have been in the captain spots. It's won. And I feel like it was a trend last year where kickers were more often than not in the winning lineups for a while on these showdown slates, which is very annoying, but that is the chance there. So there's a lot of different ways to get unique there with the kickers and captain, tight ends, maybe the random players like maybe Cavante Turpin, maybe he has a huge play there, maybe it works out, you put him in there and you just jam in the other stars, stuff like that to get different defenses. Maybe you look to not necessarily the Dallas defense and the captain, but maybe in the flex. Since they're projected to lose, that means the Eagles are most likely going to score a lot of points. Defense is going to do bad. So obviously you need like a defensive touchdown to really help out in terms of the defense working out in the flex or even the captain. But there is that chance. It's a route to get unique. So I always like to throw that out there. But in terms of me and my lineup, as I said, I'm going to get different at the captain spot. For me, I really like George Pickens here at $12,000. Obviously, we know what kind of ceiling he has, and that was playing with Russell Wilson and the Steelers, and they were just god-awful on offense. Now you go to a pass-happy offense with the Cowboys. Dak likes to throw it a ton. They're probably going to throw it a ton here. It's the game script, right? They're projected to lose by at least 7.5 points to the Eagles. Decently high-scoring game as well, so there should be a lot of passes, a lot to go around here for the Cowboys. And he's a very talented wide receiver, and it really helps when you have CeeDee Lamb on the other side drawing a lot of attention. So I expect guys like George Pickens and Jake Ferguson to be able to feast here. And with the iffy running back room, don't really know how that's going to play out. I really expect Dak to rely on CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Jake Ferguson. So for me, George Pickens is going to be kind of a main captain play for me to help me get a little bit different from the field. Now, I do expect him to get a good amount of ownership, maybe not in the captain, but more so in the flex, just because he should be a very, very solid option there for Dak to throw to. Now, in terms of other plays, in terms of the Eagles' success, what does it look like? If they're going to win and if they're going to score a lot of points, a lot of times it's going to be because of the success of Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts. And for me, that means putting them both in my lineup. Now, I'm probably going to fade A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I don't love it just because they do have pretty decent floors, especially a guy like A.J. Brown. Really seems like he's going to, in a rare chance, he does have a bad game. As you can see, 2 fancy points, 3.4. He's one of those guys who's going to speak out. He's going to get fed. Expect him to get a good amount of targets here, but I like it a little bit different. I like going with the Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, just because of that safe floor and just the massive ceiling they have, especially when they get in the red zone. Really hard for one of those two guys not to get the touchdown there. I'm probably going to keep it there in terms of the rest of the lineup. But in terms of other guys I do like, as I mentioned, I don't mind getting to both quarterbacks here. Obviously, Jalen Hurts has the touchdown upside, the rushing upside there, especially in a decently high-scoring game. Both quarterbacks is going to be a very fair and a very popular play. Jalen Hurts will throw in Dak Prescott. If you want to go with A.J. Brown route for the captain, I don't mind that. We'll throw him in here. And then in terms of the rest of the lineup here, now you could get a little bit different. You could fade a guy like Saquon. Don't love it. Let's see if we can fit it in CeeDee Lamb here. We can, but in terms of value plays, there's not a lot. So kind of backtracking a little bit here. I know I'm kind of all over the board right now. I apologize. First breakdown in forever. So getting back into the swing of things here. But in terms of kind of top to down, Saquon, Jalen Hurts at the top. Love putting them in my lineup. CeeDee and A.J. Brown, as I said, I like to get unique. One of those two are probably going to end up in the winning lineup, if not both. But for me, I'm going to get a little bit different, so I don't mind throwing them in there as well. Now, in terms of the quarterbacks, I think it's going to be very, very popular to put both in there just because of the potential upside of both. If the Eagles are up a lot, Dak Prescott's going to have to throw a lot. Leads to a good amount of upside there in terms of touchdowns and just fancy points overall and passing yards. So he looks pretty solid. But in terms of value, there's not a lot. So if you go here to kind of the running back range with the Dallas side here, it's kind of a head scratcher, right? I think this is another spot where you can get different just because no one really knows how this is going to play out. Everyone's obviously in love with Jaden Blue taking over at some point during the season over Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, but who really knows how it's going to shake out? As of right now, Javonte Williams is listed as the starting running back, but as we know with football, things can change pretty quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas gets down early. they look to a guy like Jaden Blue to kind of be that receiving back in the backfield. So if you think that's how the game script goes, I don't mind taking a shot on him. I think that's kind of one of the main routes you can get different is by taking a Dallas running back. I don't think it's going to be super popular. I think you're going to come in pretty low owned. So that is the route there. I don't love it. I think I'm going to fully fade it. But there's obviously the possibility Dallas gets in the red zone. They're going to have one of those running backs, in the backfield, and they're going to have that opportunity to score potentially. A guy I do like, as I mentioned, Jake Ferguson, going to be playing close to 70-80% of the snaps. Now, Shoemaker will get in there, but in terms of Ferguson, as we've kind of seen over the past few seasons, he just got paid, but in terms of the past few seasons, he's kind of like a little bit of a security blanket for Dak. Doesn't have like huge pop-off games. We saw in week 3, he got 15.5 fantasy points. But besides that, nothing too crazy, but it could be one of those slates where that works. That works in the captain spot where, paying down for him allows you to pay up for other players. So I don't mind him, especially if you're fading CD. It wouldn't be too shabby to go to a guy like Jake Ferguson, Pickens, as kind of your two main guys who are going to get the volume and looks if you're not going to CD. Another guy I like, obviously, is Brandon Aubrey, has the ability to go for 60+, 65+ yards in terms of field goals, as you can see. 16, 21 fantasy points, has the ability to go for a ton of fantasy points there. I think he'll be decently popular, but I think it's a solid play there at 4.8. In terms of the rest of the Cowboys, as I mentioned, Cowboys defense probably wouldn't go in the captain spot. If you put them in the flex, you're going to need them to keep this game close, get a good amount of sacks, and probably get a defensive touchdown. Obviously, going against this Eagles offense is going to be super hard, but as I said, a way to get unique and different. In terms of the wide receivers, the rest of them for the Cowboys, I don't have a ton of interest. As we can see here for the wide receiver room for the Cowboys, let's kind of take a look at week 6 when they're healthy. They had let's take a look at week 5 when they're fully healthy. Tolbert was kind of the main, wide receiver 2 alongside CD. And they did have Brandon Cooks before he got hurt there. That's kind of the 3 main wide receivers. And then Brooks and Turpin kind of filtered on in. But now with Cooks gone, as I said, it's got to be CD and Pickens to eat up the wide receiver 1 and 2 roles. And then in terms of wide receiver 3, I do think they're going to split it between Tolbert and Turpin. If I had the opportunity to pick between the two, I'd go with Turpin just because of the big play upside there. He does have that ability to return a kick. So there's 6 points there for a touchdown, as well as he's a gadget guy. They'll run some in rounds, especially in the red zone. They'll go for some deep bombs. He has the ability to kind of break open the slate. So I don't mind him as a dart throw play in the flex as a value. Shoemaker, I guess you can make that argument. Maybe he gets into the red zone, falls in there, gets you like 8 points for the touchdown, the catch, whatever it is. But in terms of the rest of the Dallas, don't like that. Kind of just the main people I talked about. And then on the Philly side, as mentioned, Saquon, Jalen Hurts, just pretty much auto plays for me. I'm going to probably fade A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I don't love it. Obviously, if this team has success, one of them is probably going to be pretty good in terms of their fantasy projections and fantasy points. But that's kind of the stance I'm taking, especially as I mentioned, when you're trying to get unique with one or only a couple lineups, you're going to have to get very different. If you want to take the $1 million to first, you're going to have to get a little bit weird. So that's kind of my stance right now. But obviously, overall, they both look fantastic. Both look like great captain plays. Goddard, I don't mind him. He seems to be a little bit more of a safer play than Jake Ferguson, but as we know with the Eagles offense, Saquon's at the top, then it's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, and then it's Dallas Goedert. So for me, I think it's a fine play. You can definitely throw him in the captain. You can definitely throw him in the flex. I don't love it, but he is there. Eagles defense, we don't really know how this offense is going to work out for the Cowboys. Eagles defense is pretty solid last year. There's that chance they get a fumble recovery, sacks, defensive pick 6. Could happen. They could be a flex play. But at 4.6, I don't love that price tag. I'd rather take a shot on a guy like Jake Elliott. A little bit safer in terms of the floor and the ceiling in terms of fantasy points for me. And then in terms of that wide receiver 3 role for the Eagles, as I mentioned, Jahan Dotson was that main guy for them last year after they acquired him. But now they have John Mechie. He's pretty talented. To go out to say he's probably more talented than Jahan Dotson. We haven't really seen it so far for either one of them in their careers, but we know what Mechie did at Alabama. He's kind of stashed and hurt on the Texans roster, but now he's back. So I don't mind taking a shot at him at 3.8 over Jahan Dotson. But as I mentioned, it's the offense goes through all those main top guys. It's really hard to kind of click on those two at their price tags when you can go over to Dallas and take a shot on a guy like Turpin, who has just, I believe, much more upside there. And then in terms of the rest of the team here, if you want to take a shot on a guy like Will Shipley as being the RB2, maybe gets a few passes, breaks open a few big ones, or if you want to get super, super different, maybe take a shot on A.J. Dillon, getting like a 1 or 2 red zone carries. I don't see it. Obviously, they have Saquon. Obviously, they have Jalen Hurts. I don't think they'll ever throw A.J. Dillon in there, but who knows? As I mentioned, getting different is the main way to go on the showdown slate. So as I mentioned, for me, really, really love in my captain spot. George Pickens here, $12,000. And I do love throwing in Saquon and Jalen Hurts and getting different from there. So really appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit that like button and subscribe. I'll be better for the foreseeable future in terms of the next breakdown and getting back in the swing of things here. But once again, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.